the tears streaming down 7-year-old Toby Bennett's face, reflected in the polished silverware of Bellevue's most exclusive restaurant. His father, William Bennett, the 39-year-old tech billionaire, whose name graced the skyline of Seattle, sat across from him, deep in conversation with investors who couldn't stop glancing uncomfortably at the quietly sobbing child. "Toby, please," William whispered, his voice a mixture of embarrassment and exasperation. "We talked about this. Just eat your dinner." But Toby couldn't stop. His small shoulders shook as he tried to muffle his sobs, his untouched plate of gourmet mac and cheese growing cold. The 5th anniversary of his mother's death had passed just 3 days ago, and William had been too consumed with the largest merger in his company's history to remember. Amelia Rodriguez, a 28-year-old waitress with warm brown eyes and a single mother to her own 6-year-old daughter, watched the scene unfold from across the dining room. In her 3 years working at the Ivory Tower, she had served countless celebrities and business moguls, but something about the little boy's quiet desperation called to her in a way she couldn't ignore. "Is everything all right with your meals, gentlemen?" Amelia approached the table with practiced grace, but her eyes focused on Toby. "Everything's fine," William replied curtly, barely looking up from his tablet, where stock projections scrolled endlessly. "The boy's just tired." Amelia knelt beside Toby's chair, breaking every protocol of the 5-star establishment. "Would you like some fresh mac and cheese? I can have the chef make it extra cheesy," she whispered, just loud enough for the boy to hear. Toby looked up, his blue eyes, a mirror image of his father's, swimming with tears. He shook his head slightly. "You know," Amelia said softly, "sometimes when my daughter is sad, we make up stories about the people around us. Like that man over there." She nodded discreetly toward an elderly gentleman dining alone. "I bet he's a secret astronaut who's walked on the moon." A tiny flicker of interest crossed Toby's face. "Would you like to try?" she asked. Toby hesitated, then whispered, "The lady in the red dress is running away from home because her pet tiger got too big." Amelia's laugh was genuine and warm. "That's better than mine. You're good at this." For the first time that evening, a small smile tugged at the corner of Toby's mouth. William glanced over, surprised by the change in his son's demeanor. His gaze met Amelia's, and for a moment, something passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, or a question. "I should get back to work," Amelia said, standing up. "But if you need anything else, just ask for Amelia." As she turned to leave, Toby grabbed her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. Amelia squeezed his small fingers gently, before returning to her duties, unaware that this small interaction would change the course of all their lives. Later that evening, as the restaurant emptied and the Bennett party prepared to leave, William approached the payment counter while Toby waited by the coat check. "Your server tonight was Amelia, correct?" William asked the maitre d'. "Yes, Mr. Bennett. I hope everything was satisfactory." William nodded, his expression unreadable. "She was kind to my son. I'd like to leave something extra." He placed his black card on the counter alongside a business card. "And please give her this. Tell her to call if she's interested in a different position." The maitre d' raised an eyebrow, but knew better than to question William Bennett. "Of course, sir." Across the restaurant, Amelia wiped down her last table, mentally calculating how much of tonight's tips would go toward Lucia's upcoming birthday party and how much toward their perpetually behind rent. Working at the Ivory Tower paid better than most restaurants, but Seattle's cost of living meant she was always one emergency away from financial disaster. "Amelia," the maitre d' called, "a word before you clock out." She followed him to the office, anxiety rising. Had she broken too many rules by talking to the Bennett boy? Was this a warning? Or worse, was she being let go? "Mr. Bennett left this for you." He handed her an envelope with the business card and a $5,000 tip. Amelia's knees nearly buckled. "That's impossible. It must be a mistake." "William Bennett doesn't make mistakes with money," the maitre d' replied dryly, "and he specifically asked for you to have this." With trembling hands, Amelia opened the envelope. Inside was a check that made her gasp, along with the business card that read simply, William Bennett, CEO Bennett Technologies, with a personal phone number handwritten on the back. "This is crazy," Amelia whispered. "That's not all," the maitre d' continued. "He mentioned something about a position." Amelia stared at the business card, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. What kind of position would a billionaire offer a waitress? And why her? The answer came 3 days later when her phone rang with an unknown number as she was walking Lucia home from school. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Patricia Winters, Mr. Bennett's executive assistant. He was hoping you might be available to come in for an interview tomorrow morning." "Interview?" Amelia repeated, watching Lucia skip ahead on the sidewalk. "For what position exactly?" "Mr. Bennett would prefer to discuss that in person. The car will pick you up at 9. Will that work with your schedule?" Before Amelia could process what was happening, she found herself agreeing, hanging up, and staring at her phone in disbelief. That night, after tucking Lucia into bed, Amelia searched online for information about William Bennett. The results were overwhelming. Tech prodigy who built his first company at 19, billionaire by 30, widower at 34, when his wife Elizabeth died in a private plane crash. Photos showed a strikingly handsome man with piercing blue eyes, usually looking serious or slightly annoyed with the camera. Very few pictures included his son, and those that did were mostly from formal events, the boy always appearing solemn beyond his years. One article from 3 years ago caught her attention. Bennett refuses to hire another nanny after son's kidnapping attempt. Apparently, a nanny hired through an agency had been part of a plot to kidnap Toby for ransom. The plan was foiled, but William had become extremely protective and distrustful since. "Is that why the boy looked so sad?" Amelia wondered aloud. No mother, distant father, and no one else to care for him. The next morning, after dropping Lucia at school, Amelia found a sleek black car waiting outside their modest apartment building. The driver opened the door without a word, and she slipped into the back seat. Feeling completely out of place in her best interview outfit, a simple navy dress she'd found on clearance last year. Bennett Technologies' headquarters dominated the Seattle skyline, a towering structure of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. Amelia's stomach knotted as the elevator whisked her up to the executive floor, where Patricia, a poised woman in her 50s, greeted her. "Ms. Rodriguez, welcome. Mr. Bennett will see you now." The office was exactly what Amelia had expected. Minimalist, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. What she hadn't expected was Toby sitting in a corner of the massive room, quietly building something with electronic blocks, while his father typed at a holographic display. William looked up as she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Mr. Bennett," Amelia nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I admit I'm curious about what position you might have in mind for someone with my qualifications." William studied her for a moment before speaking. "The night at the restaurant, my son was crying. You knelt down and whispered something to him that made him smile. What did you say?" The question caught Amelia off guard. "I suggested we make up stories about the other people in the restaurant. It's a game I play with my daughter when she's upset." William's gaze intensified. "And how did you know that's what he needed?" Amelia glanced at Toby, who was pretending not to listen. "I didn't. I just know what works with my Lucia. Children usually need connection more than solutions." A flicker of something, recognition, regret, crossed William's face. "That's precisely why I asked you here today, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm not looking for an employee for my company. I'm looking for someone for Toby." Amelia's mind raced as she processed William's words. "Someone for Toby? Like a nanny?" "Not exactly." William's eyes darted briefly to his son before returning to Amelia. "Toby has tutors, security, and household staff who ensure his physical needs are met. What he lacks is—" He trailed off, seeming uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "A consistent emotional presence," Amelia finished quietly. William nodded, his jaw tightening. Yes. The article you undoubtedly read, the kidnapping attempt, Amelia acknowledged. That barely scratches the surface. William leaned forward, lowering his voice. There have been 3 separate incidents. The first was the nanny from the agency. The second was a family friend who turned out to be working for competitors hoping to leverage Toby against me. The third, his voice hardened. The third was his maternal aunt. Amelia's eyes widened. His own aunt. Elizabeth's sister blamed me for the plane crash. She became unstable. Tried to take him from his school. William ran a hand through his immaculately styled hair, momentarily disrupting its perfect arrangement. I've ensured Toby's physical safety, but at the cost of his happiness. The incident at the restaurant made that painfully clear. Across the room, Toby had abandoned any pretense of not listening. His small hands had stopped moving over his electronic building blocks, his head tilted slightly toward their conversation. Mr. Bennett, Amelia said carefully, what exactly is the position you're offering? William stood and walked to the window, his back to her. I'm offering you a role as Toby's companion, someone who can be there for him in ways I've failed to be. You would pick him up from school, spend afternoons with him, accompany us to dinners and events. Essentially, you would be the stable, nurturing presence he needs. You want to hire me to care about your son? Amelia couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. William turned, his expression shuttered. I want to hire you to show him that it's safe to form connections again. My son hasn't truly smiled in 3 years, Ms. Rodriguez. Not until you spoke with him. Amelia glanced at Toby, who quickly looked away, pretending to be absorbed in his blocks again. Her heart ached for the lonely little boy. I have a daughter, she said. Lucia is 6. I can't just abandon her for this position. Bring her, William replied instantly. Toby could benefit from interacting with a peer. You'd have a suite in our home, private schooling for your daughter, and a compensation package that would secure her future education through postgraduate studies should she choose that path. Amelia's breath caught. The offer was beyond generous. It was life-changing. But something felt wrong about commodifying emotional connection. And if it doesn't work out, if Toby doesn't respond to me or doesn't get along with Lucia, 3 months, William countered. Try for 3 months. Regardless of the outcome, I'll establish a trust for your daughter's education. Amelia stood up, needing to move. This is a lot to process, Mr. Bennett. You're essentially asking me to uproot our lives based on a 5-minute interaction with your son. I'm asking you to trust what I saw in that interaction. For the first time, raw emotion broke through William's controlled facade. I've interviewed 37 candidates from top child psychology programs, none of them connected with Toby the way you did in those 5 minutes. Before Amelia could respond, Toby's small voice cut through the tension. I liked her stories. Both adults turned to look at him. He hadn't moved from his spot, but was now looking directly at them. And she didn't talk to me like I'm stupid. The simple statement hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Amelia took a deep breath. I'd need to talk to Lucia. This affects her too. Of course, William nodded. Take the weekend to consider. The offer remains open until Monday. As Amelia prepared to leave, Toby suddenly stood and walked over to her. He held out one of his electronic building blocks. For your daughter, he said solemnly. It's a prototype. Dad's company makes them. Touched by the gesture, Amelia accepted the gift. Thank you, Toby, that's very thoughtful. Outside the imposing Bennett Technologies building, Amelia leaned against a concrete pillar, the electronic block clutched in her hand, feeling as though she'd stepped into someone else's life. The job would solve every financial worry she'd ever had, but at what cost? Would she be selling her ability to genuinely care? And how would Lucia adjust to such a dramatic change? That evening, after Lucia was asleep, Amelia called her closest friend, Darius, who managed the local community center where Lucia attended after-school programs. He wants to pay you to be a stand-in mom, Darius asked incredulously. after Amelia explained the situation. "That's some Hallmark movie nonsense right there. It's not quite that simple," Amelia sighed. "I think he genuinely wants someone who can connect with Toby, and the benefits for Lucia would be incredible." "But," Darius prompted, "but I'd be living in their world. A world of private jets and penthouses. What happens when Lucia and I get used to that? Then it's over. How do we come back from that?" She twisted the phone cord nervously. "And what if I start caring for Toby for real? He's already lost so much. I can't be another person who disappears from his life." Darius was quiet for a moment. "You're already thinking like a mom to this kid. And you've met him once." The observation hit Amelia hard. "That's the problem, isn't it? I can already see how easily I could care about him." The weekend passed in a blur of pros and cons lists, discussions with Lucia about the potential move, and sleepless nights weighing the decision. Lucia was initially excited about the idea of living in a castle, her interpretation of the Bennett mansion she'd seen in online photos, but grew more subdued when she realized it meant leaving her friends and the familiar surroundings of their small apartment. "But you'd have your own playroom," Amelia tried, watching her daughter's face carefully, "and we could save money for those dance classes you wanted." Lucia looked up from her drawing. "Would I still see you every day?" The question broke Amelia's heart a little. "Of course, Mija. More than now, actually. I wouldn't have to work such long hours." By Sunday evening, Amelia had made her decision. She would accept William's offer, but with conditions. She called the number on his business card. "Mr. Bennett, it's Amelia Rodriguez. I've thought about your proposal." "And?" His voice was carefully neutral. "I'll accept on 3 conditions." She took a deep breath. "First, Lucia and I maintain our own apartment for the first month. We'll stay at your home during the week, but return to our place on weekends. Second, I want a clear exit strategy if things don't work out, including transitional support for Toby. And third," she hesitated before plunging ahead, "I need to know you're committed to being more present in Toby's life. I won't be a replacement for you." The silence on the other end stretched so long that Amelia feared she'd overstepped. Finally, William spoke. "Those are reasonable conditions. The third one, however, may prove challenging given my schedule." "Then adjust your schedule," Amelia replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "Toby doesn't need perfect. He just needs present." Another long pause. "You drive a hard bargain, Ms. Rodriguez. When it comes to children's well-being, I do." "Very well. I agree to your terms. Patricia will contact you tomorrow with the details." True to his word, Patricia called first thing Monday morning with a comprehensive plan. Amelia would begin the following week. A car would transport Lucia to and from her current school until arrangements could be made for her transfer, and the Bennett security team would install additional measures at Amelia's apartment for the weekends they spent there. What Patricia didn't mention, and what Amelia couldn't possibly have anticipated, was the media firestorm that erupted Wednesday morning when a Seattle business blog ran the headline, "Bennett Billionaire Moves Waitress and Daughter into Family Mansion." By noon, the story had been picked up by national outlets, and by dinner, paparazzi were camped outside Amelia's apartment building. "Is it true you're William Bennett's new girlfriend?" shouted one reporter, as Amelia hurried Lucia from the car to their building entrance. "Is this a pretty woman situation?" called another. Lucia clutched Amelia's hand tightly. "Mommy, why are they taking pictures of us?" "Just keep walking, Mija," Amelia whispered, trying to shield her daughter's face with her body. "Don't look at them." Inside their apartment, Amelia's phone rang. William's name flashed on the screen. "I'm sending security now," he said without preamble. "Pack what you need. You're moving into the house tonight. This is exactly why I didn't want to delay." "But our agreement," Amelia began. "The circumstances have changed," William cut her off. "They're running background checks on you as we speak. By morning, they'll know everything from your credit score to your high school GPA." "Is that what you want Lucia exposed to?" Amelia looked at her daughter, who was peering anxiously through the window blinds at the gathering crowd below. "No," she admitted quietly. "That's not what I want." The security team will be there in 15 minutes. They'll handle the media and get you out safely. His voice softened slightly. I'm sorry about this, Amelia. It's the unfortunate reality of being connected to my family. As she hung up, Amelia realized with a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning. She had naively thought she could keep her old life separate from the new role she was taking on. Now, it seemed those worlds were colliding in ways she couldn't control. The Bennett estate sprawled across 5 acres in Medina, with Lake Washington glittering beyond manicured gardens. As the security team's vehicle passed through imposing gates, Amelia felt as though they were entering another world. Lucia pressed her face against the window, eyes wide at the sight of the modernist mansion illuminated against the night sky. It really is a castle, she whispered. Security Chief Marcus Reynolds, a former military man with kind eyes that belied his intimidating build, glanced at them in the rearview mirror. Mr. Bennett has prepared the East Wing for you both. It has its own entrance and security protocols. Is Toby already asleep? Amelia asked, checking her watch. It was nearly 10, well past both children's bedtimes. No, ma'am. He's waiting with his father in the main living room. The entrance hall was a soaring space of marble and glass, minimalist yet undeniably luxurious. William stood as they entered, his expression tense. Beside him, Toby sat in pajamas, clutching a worn stuffed elephant, a surprisingly ordinary item in such extraordinary surroundings. I apologize for the circumstances, William said formally, though his eyes betrayed genuine concern. The media attention should die down once they find a more interesting story. Lucia hid partially behind Amelia, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar setting and the intensity of William's presence. Toby noticed her shyness and slid off his chair, approaching with the stuffed elephant extended. This is Ellie, he said quietly. She helps when things are scary. Lucia hesitated, then accepted the elephant with a small smile. Thank you, she whispered. The simple exchange seemed to ease the tension in the room. William's shoulders relaxed slightly, and Amelia felt a rush of gratitude toward Toby for his thoughtfulness. Perhaps we should all get some rest, William suggested. Marcus will show you to your quarters. The quarters turned out to be a luxurious 3-bedroom suite with its own kitchen, living area, and a playroom stocked with toys that would have made any child dizzy with excitement. But Lucia was too exhausted for exploration, falling asleep almost immediately in her new bedroom. Amelia stood at the window looking out at the moonlit lake, trying to process the day's whirlwind of events. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Just checking that you have everything you need, William said when she opened it. We're fine, thank you. Amelia hesitated, then added, I think we should talk about what happened today, about the media attention. William's jaw tightened. I had Patricia issue a statement clarifying your role. And what exactly is my role, Mr. Bennett? Because the reporters seemed convinced I'm your latest conquest. The words came out sharper than intended, but the day's stress had worn her patience thin. You're Toby's companion, William replied, his tone equally clipped. Nothing more. Then perhaps you should make that clearer to your social circle, because someone fed that story to the press. Amelia crossed her arms. I won't have my daughter exposed to those kinds of rumors. William's expression darkened. I assure you I'm as displeased as you are. My team is investigating the leak. He paused, then added reluctantly, It may have been Christine Harlow. Who? A woman I've been seeing occasionally. Strictly business events, nothing serious. She was at the restaurant the night you and Toby interacted. His discomfort was evident. She may have drawn her own conclusions. Amelia pressed her fingers to her temples. So, your not-quite girlfriend is jealous of the working-class single mom you hired to care for your son. This is exactly the kind of drama I was hoping to avoid. For the first time, a hint of a smile touched William's lips. When you put it that way, it does sound rather absurd. The unexpected moment of levity broke some of the tension between them. Amelia found herself noticing how his features softened when he wasn't scowling, how his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, revealing a man who perhaps once smiled more easily. "We should establish some ground rules," she said, refocusing, "for the children's sake." William nodded. "Agreed. But perhaps in the morning? It's been a long day for everyone." As he turned to leave, Amelia called after him, "Does Toby know why I'm here? The truth, I mean." William paused. "He knows you're here to spend time with him. The details of our arrangement aren't important. With all due respect, Mr. Bennet, they are to me. I won't lie to him." William studied her for a long moment. "Your honesty is refreshing. Good night, Ms. Rodriguez." "Good night, Mr. Bennet." The following days established a routine of sorts. Mornings began with breakfast in the main kitchen. Initially awkward affairs where William checked his emails while the children ate in silence, but gradually warming as Lucia's natural exuberance broke through the stiffness. Amelia would take Toby to school, with security discreetly following, then return to help Lucia settle into her new surroundings before picking Toby up in the afternoon. The media attention, as William had predicted, gradually waned. But the damage had been done. Amelia's face had been splashed across tabloids, and speculation about her relationship with William persisted in gossip columns. One afternoon, 2 weeks into their arrangement, Amelia was helping Toby with his science project in the estate's conservatory when Patricia appeared at the doorway. "Ms. Rodriguez, there's someone at the gate asking for you. A Mr. Darius Coleman." Amelia brightened. "My friend from the community center." "Can you let him in, please?" Patricia hesitated. "Mr. Bennet has protocols about visitors." "I'll clear it," came William's voice as he appeared behind his assistant. "Let him through." Darius's reaction to the Bennet estate was comically exaggerated awe, but his warmth was genuine as he hugged Amelia tightly. "Look at you," he teased, "living in a literal glass palace." "It's temporary," she reminded him, though the statement felt increasingly uncertain. In just 2 weeks, both children had formed a bond that would be painful to disrupt. After introducing Darius to Toby, Amelia left the boy with his project to speak privately with her friend on the terrace. "So, the billionaire," Darius raised an eyebrow as they sat overlooking the gardens. "Is he as cold as he seems in interviews?" Amelia considered the question. "He's complicated. Fiercely protective of Toby, brilliant with business, but completely lost when it comes to emotional connection." She paused. "I think Elizabeth's death broke something in him." "And the media speculation about you two?" "Completely fabricated," Amelia said firmly, ignoring the small flutter she sometimes felt when William entered a room. "I'm here for Toby." Darius gave her a knowing look but didn't press further. Instead, he handed her an envelope. "Speaking of why I came, the community center received this yesterday. It's addressed to you." Amelia opened it, finding an official-looking document inside. As she read, her face paled. "What is it?" Darius asked, concerned. "It's from Elizabeth Bennet's sister, Toby's aunt. She's filed a petition for visitation rights and is claiming I'm an unsuitable influence on Toby." Amelia's hands trembled. "She's using the tabloid stories as evidence that William is creating an immoral environment for his son." "That's ridiculous," Darius protested. "You're the most moral person I know." "She's claiming William and I are having an affair, and that it's confusing for Toby." Amelia stood, agitated. "I need to tell William." They found him in his home office, on a video call with executives. He ended the meeting immediately when he saw Amelia's expression. "What's happened?" She handed him the document silently. His face hardened as he read, a muscle working in his jaw. "Victoria," he muttered, then looked up at Amelia. "I'm sorry you've been dragged into this. She's been trying to get access to Toby for years." "Why would she send this to the community center?" Amelia asked. William's expression grew troubled. "To intimidate you, to make you leave." "Is she dangerous?" Amelia thought of Lucia, of both children potentially at risk. "Not physically, but she's manipulative and persistent." William set the document down. "I'll have my legal team handle this. In the meantime, we should be careful about public appearances." That evening, after both children were asleep, Amelia found William in the kitchen, uncharacteristically nursing a glass of whiskey in the dark. "I've been thinking about Victoria's petition," she said, pouring herself a glass of water. "Maybe I should step back temporarily, just until this blows over." William shook his head. "That would only hurt Toby. He's thriving with you here." He took a sip of whiskey. "Do you know he's sleeping through the night now? No nightmares for the first time in years." Amelia leaned against the counter. "I don't want to be the reason he loses his aunt." "Victoria lost that privilege when she tried to take him from his school," William said sharply. Then, more quietly, "Elizabeth would never have wanted her sister near Toby, not after what happened." "What did happen? Beyond what was in the news reports?" William was silent for so long that Amelia thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Victoria was supposed to be on that plane with Elizabeth. They'd argued that morning, and Victoria took a later flight." His voice grew strained. "After the crash, she became obsessed with the idea that I had somehow engineered it, that I wanted Elizabeth gone. It was grief turning into delusion, but she convinced herself it was true." "That's awful," Amelia murmured. "For all of you. The worst part," William continued, staring into his glass, "is that there was truth mixed with her delusion. Elizabeth and we were having problems. She felt I was too focused on the company, not present enough with Toby." He looked up, his eyes haunted. She was right. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest, in a way Amelia hadn't expected from the controlled billionaire. "I'm making the same mistakes with Toby now," he admitted quietly. "That's why I needed you." Before Amelia could respond, the kitchen lights suddenly flickered on, revealing Toby standing in the doorway, his expression stricken. "You're paying her to like me?" he whispered, his voice breaking on the words. "It's not real?" The color drained from William's face. "Toby." But the boy had already turned and fled, his small footsteps echoing down the hallway. "Toby, wait!" Amelia called, starting after him. William caught her arm. "Let me, please." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of shared concern that transcended their formal arrangement. William found Toby in the treehouse overlooking the lake, a sanctuary Elizabeth had designed for him before her death. The boy sat with his knees drawn up to his chest, his face streaked with tears. "You lied," he accused, as William climbed through the entrance. "You both lied. Not about caring for you," William said softly, keeping his distance. "Never about that." "But you're paying her," Toby insisted. "To pretend." William took a deep breath. "I paid her to come here, yes, but what's happened since, how she cares for you, how Lucia has become your friend, none of that can be bought, Toby, that's real." The boy looked away, unconvinced. "Mom said you can't buy people. Your mother," William said carefully, "was the wisest person I've ever known." And she was right. He moved closer, sitting beside his son. "I made a mistake trying to solve a problem the only way I knew how, with money. But Amelia, she's teaching me there are some things money can't fix." Toby looked at his father, vulnerability and hope warring in his expression. "Do you like her? For real?" The question caught William off guard. "I respect her very much." "That's not what I asked." William almost smiled at his son's perception. "You sound like your mother." He sighed. "Yes, Toby, I like her for real. But that doesn't mean she feels the same way." Toby considered this. "She might. She smiles differently at you than at other grown-ups." From the mouth of a child, the observation landed with surprising weight. Before William could process it, Amelia's voice called from below. "Toby, Mr. Bennett, are you up there?" "We're coming down," William replied, helping Toby to his feet. But as they reached the treehouse door, Toby stopped him. "Dad, I don't want Amelia to be paid to be my friend anymore." William nodded slowly. "I understand." What neither of them realized as they descended was that this conversation would set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives irrevocably. The following morning carried a weight of unspoken tension. Amelia prepared breakfast as usual, but Toby was subdued, avoiding her gaze. William had already left for an early meeting, leaving only a terse note about returning for dinner. "Is Toby mad at us?" Lucia whispered as she helped set the table, sensitive to the shift in atmosphere. "He overheard something that confused him," Amelia explained carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups make complicated arrangements that don't make sense to children." "Like when you said we were just visiting this house, but now we live here?" Lucia asked with childlike directness. The innocent observation struck Amelia like a physical blow. She had indeed told Lucia their situation was temporary, yet 3 weeks had passed with no mention of returning to their apartment. The realization raised uncomfortable questions about her own willingness to slip into this gilded life. "Exactly like that," she murmured. "Sometimes plans change." At breakfast, Toby picked at his food silently, while Lucia chatted about her new school. When Amelia asked if he was ready to leave for school, he nodded without looking up. The drive was uncomfortably quiet until Amelia finally spoke. "Toby, I know what you heard last night hurt you, but I want you to know that my caring for you is real. It wasn't part of any agreement with your father." Toby stared out the window. "But he pays you." "Yes," Amelia acknowledged, "he does. And initially that's why I came, but now—" She searched for words a 7-year-old could understand. "Now I would be here even without that." "Why?" The single word held a world of vulnerability. Amelia's throat tightened. "Because you matter to me, Toby. You and your dad both do." The boy finally looked at her, studying her face as if searching for deception. "Dad said he likes you. For real." The unexpected revelation sent a flutter through Amelia's chest, but before she could respond, they arrived at the school drop-off. "Have a good day," she called, as Toby walked toward the entrance. He paused, then turned back to give her a quick, fierce hug before running inside. Returning to the estate, Amelia found Patricia waiting in the foyer, her expression grave. "Ms. Rodriguez, there's been a development with Victoria Bennett. She's requesting a meeting with you." Amelia's stomach dropped. "Does William know?" "Mr. Bennett is unreachable at the moment. His flight to San Francisco was diverted due to mechanical issues." Patricia handed her a business card. "Victoria is staying at the Fairmont. She was quite insistent." Amelia studied the card. "You don't think I should go, do you?" Patricia's professional mask slipped slightly. "Between us? No, but she's threatened to go to the press again if you refuse." After dropping Lucia at her new school, Amelia found herself driving to the Fairmont, her thoughts in turmoil. Meeting Victoria felt like a betrayal of William's trust, yet ignoring her seemed potentially worse for everyone. Victoria Bennett was waiting in the hotel lounge, a striking woman whose resemblance to her deceased sister was evident in photographs Amelia had seen. In person, however, Victoria lacked the warmth that shone from Elizabeth's eyes in those images. "Ms. Rodriguez," Victoria greeted her with cool assessment. "Thank you for coming." "I want to be clear," Amelia began immediately. "I'm here to prevent further media attention that would harm Toby. Nothing more." Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers tapped against her teacup. "Admirable, and precisely why I wanted to meet you." She leaned forward. "I believe you genuinely care about my nephew's welfare." "I do," Amelia confirmed cautiously. "Then perhaps you'll understand my concern. William has systematically isolated Toby from his mother's family, from anyone who reminds him of Elizabeth." Victoria's composed facade cracked slightly. "He's my sister's son, my only connection to her." Despite her wariness, Amelia felt a pang of sympathy. "I understand that, but attempting to take him from school wasn't the answer." "A desperate act I deeply regret," Victoria admitted, "but William gave me no alternative." She met Amelia's gaze directly. "I'm not asking for custody, just visitation, supervised if necessary." "Why are you telling me this? I have no influence over William's decisions." Victoria smiled thinly. "Don't you?" The man who hasn't let anyone close in 3 years has moved you into his home. That speaks volumes. Amelia shifted uncomfortably. Our arrangement is professional, perhaps, but it could be more. Victoria's voice softened. Elizabeth would have liked you, I think. She valued authenticity above all else, something my brother-in-law lost sight of after her death. Before Amelia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Where are you? Security says you left without them. Call immediately. I have to go," she said, standing abruptly. Victoria reached for her hand. "Just consider what I've said. For Toby's sake. He deserves to know his mother's family." The drive back to the Bennett estate was fraught with conflicting emotions. Part of Amelia understood Victoria's desire to maintain a connection with her nephew, yet William's fierce protectiveness came from genuine concern for Toby's well-being. William was waiting at the entrance when she arrived, his expression thunderous. "You met with Victoria?" he demanded without preamble. "How did you—" "Security tracked your location. Answer the question." Anger flared in Amelia's chest. "You're having me followed?" "For your protection," William countered. "Which you deliberately evaded to meet with someone I explicitly warned you about." "She threatened to go to the press again," Amelia explained, trying to keep her voice level. "I went to prevent that." William's jaw clenched. "That's what she wants you to think. Victoria manipulates everyone around her." He paced across the foyer. "What did she say?" "That she just wants visitation rights. That she misses her connection to Elizabeth through Toby." Amelia hesitated. "William, is it possible she's genuinely changed? That she just wants to be part of his life?" "No," he said flatly. "It's not. You don't know what she's capable of." "Then help me understand," Amelia pleaded, "because from where I stand, keeping Toby from his mother's family seems unnecessarily harsh." Something in William's expression shifted, a crack in his armor. "My office. Now." In the privacy of his minimalist sanctuary, William unlocked a drawer and retrieved a file, placing it on the desk between them. Victoria's psychiatric evaluations. Court ordered after the school incident. Amelia opened the file hesitantly, skimming reports that detailed paranoid ideation, obsessive tendencies, and recommendation for involuntary commitment that Victoria had evaded by leaving the state. "She was diagnosed with delusional disorder," William explained quietly. "Exacerbated by grief, but present before Elizabeth's death, according to her ex-husband." Amelia looked up, stunned. She seemed so rational. "She can be, when it serves her purpose." William rubbed his temples. "I don't keep Toby from her out of spite, Amelia. I do it to protect him from her instability." The revelation cast Victoria's calm demeanor in a disturbing new light. "I'm sorry," Amelia said softly. "I should have trusted your judgment." William's expression softened unexpectedly. "You were trying to do what you thought was right for Toby. I can't fault that." He sat heavily in his chair. "It's one of the things I've come to admire about you." The moment felt precariously balanced between professional boundaries and something deeper. Before either could speak again, William's phone rang. Patricia, with news that changed everything. "Victoria's at Toby's school," William said, his face ashen as he hung up. "She used your meeting as a distraction." They raced to the school, William making urgent calls to security and police while Amelia battled crushing guilt. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Patrol cars with flashing lights, concerned parents gathering outside, school administrators attempting to maintain order. Principal Davis met them at the entrance. "Mr. Bennett, Miss Rodriguez, please know that Toby is safe. He's in my office with the school counselor." "Where's Victoria?" William demanded. "Security detained her before she could reach Toby's classroom. The police have taken her into custody." The principal hesitated. "But there's something else you should know. Toby saw her being arrested. He was quite upset, not scared, but concerned for her. In the principal's office, they found Toby sitting quietly, clutching Ellie the elephant. When he saw them, he ran to William first, wrapping his arms around his father's waist. Then, to Amelia's surprise, he reached for her hand. "Aunt Victoria was crying," he said solemnly. "She showed me pictures of Mom." William knelt to Toby's level. "I'm sorry you had to see that, buddy." "Is she sick?" Toby asked. "Like Mom was before she died?" The innocent question revealed how much the boy understood about his family's troubled history. "Yes," William answered honestly, "but a different kind of sick, the kind that doctors can help with, but she has to want that help." As they drove home, Toby sitting between them in the back of the security vehicle, Amelia felt something fundamental shift in their dynamic. The crisis had stripped away pretense, leaving three people who had come to need one another. That evening, after Toby and Lucia were finally asleep, Amelia found William on the terrace, staring out at the moonlit lake. "I've made a decision," he said without turning. "I'm terminating our arrangement." Amelia's heart sank, but before she could speak, William continued. "I hired you to provide what I couldn't give Toby. But today made me realize I've been hiding behind that arrangement, using your presence as an excuse to maintain emotional distance from my own son." He turned to face her, his expression open in a way she'd never seen before. "I need to be the father Toby deserves. And you—" He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "You deserve more than being an employee in this household." "What are you saying?" Amelia asked carefully. "I'm saying I'd like you and Lucia to stay, but not as part of any financial arrangement." William took a step closer. "I'm saying Toby needs you, and I—" He stopped, vulnerability evident in his eyes. "I find that I need you too." The admission hung in the air between them, honest and unvarnished. "What about the media?" Amelia asked. "The speculation." "Let them speculate," William replied with newfound resolve. "I've spent 3 years hiding from life after Elizabeth. I don't want to hide anymore." Amelia thought of Toby's words in the restaurant that first night, the whispered observation that had started everything. He only needs a mum. But she now understood it wasn't that simple. What Toby needed, what they all needed, was connection, the courage to form a new kind of family from the broken pieces of their separate lives. "No more financial arrangements," she agreed softly. "But perhaps a partnership. For the children's sake at first, and then—" William reached for her hand, his touch tentative but full of promise. "And then we see where it leads." 6 months later, the same restaurant where they first met hosted a small celebration. Toby's 8th birthday. The boy who once cried silently now laughed openly, teaching Lucia his favorite game of making up stories about strangers. "The man with the blue tie," Toby whispered to her, "is secretly a superhero who can talk to fish." "No way," Lucia giggled. "He's obviously a pirate in disguise. Look at his earring." Across the table, William's hand found Amelia's beneath the tablecloth, their fingers intertwining naturally. The headlines had long since moved on to other stories. Victoria was receiving treatment as part of a plea agreement, and the Bennet mansion had slowly transformed from a sterile monument to grief into a home filled with the messy vibrancy of family life. "They're happy," Amelia observed quietly, watching the children's animated faces. William squeezed her hand gently. "We all are." He paused, then added with characteristic honesty, "Elizabeth would approve, I think." "Of what?" Amelia asked. William's eyes, no longer haunted but clear and present, met hers. "Of us learning to live again, of finding family in unexpected places." As if on cue, Toby looked up from his game with Lucia and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, replacing the tears that had once reflected in the polished silverware of this very restaurant. In that smile, Amelia saw everything that mattered, not the mansion or the security or the wealth, but the simple, profound joy of belonging. "To unexpected places," she agreed, raising her glass in a quiet toast to the journey that had brought them together, a journey that began with a waitress's whispered words and a billionaire's lonely son, and had led them all to something far more valuable than any fortune could buy.